Welcome to Crossroads Podcast, real conversations about mental health in the MENA region. I'm Reece Lavender, clinical psychologist practicing at Mahdi Psychology Center in Cairo and in Dubai. In each episode, I sit down with professionals to discuss how culture, care, and psychology intersect in our daily lives. Whether you're a parent, student, doctor, or just curious, these conversations are for you. Sharryn Smith, welcome to Crossroads, where we aim to talk about how psychology and culture meet. You truly are an international educator. You've worked all over the world, the UAE, Qatar, Jordan, Egypt for the longest time, and also Sweden. I'd like to understand your journey to where you are today as a Senko at Cairo English School in Cairo. Tell me a little bit more about how you came to work in this role.
So how I got to Egypt or how I got to be in Senko?
Both. Maybe both, yeah.
I began my teaching career probably 35 years ago. I've always worked with children that would be classed as on the spectrum or special educational needs. I did 12 years in the UK, working with predominantly neurodivergent ADHD children. Back then they were classed as naughty kids because ADHD wasn't as recognised as it is now. And then Jordan found me. So I did 2 years in Jordan, 2 years in Qatar, 2 years in Sweden, 2 years in Abu Dhabi, and then 8 years here. 8 years in Egypt. I qualified as a Senko in Egypt.
What is Senko? Tell me.
Special Educational Needs Coordinator.
Okay.
It's a very British term. I'm not sure whether schools in America or Canada have the same terminology. It basically means that I am responsible for identifying special educational needs, ensuring that these children have individual education plans, identifying what strategies need to be put in place for those children to ensure that they get the best education that they can possibly have. Because every child deserves the best education. And education is not for all. One size doesn't fit all. So we have to be aware that they have different needs. So that's my role as a Senko.
What are the main issues that you notice or have seen in the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, and particularly in Egypt? What do you come across most?
I think it's the same in whatever country you're in. Children are children. Whatever country you're in, the issues that children have, whether they be British, Emirati, Qatari, Egyptian, it's very much the same. It's a lot ADHD, a lot.
It's highly genetic.
Yeah. There's not a lot of autism in the field that I work in my school. And I think that's because Egypt is still progressing in diagnosing autism. And I think some of the high functioning autistic children, which could manage within schools like mine, are screened out early.
Or it gets missed, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then there's a lot of processing speed and working memory issues, so cognitive issues. Alongside dyslexia, dyscalculia is still not diagnosed within Egypt.
So
dyspraxia is not neither.
Yeah, so dyscalculia is the difficulty with math ability, right?
Yeah.
And dyspraxia, that
Movement, gross and fine motor skills.
That we might call clumsiness, really, that we see a lot with ADHD, particularly in girls, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So someone like me, clinical psychologist, how would you and I work together to support young people that you interact with, that you support? How would we best work together?
I think having a trusted person that I can send parents to for diagnoses, because here, culturally, it's still difficult to accept that your child is not perfect, in inverted commas.
Or is different.
Yeah, it's very difficult for parents to accept that their child may be different from other children. When I first moved into this role 8 years ago, 1 in 5 would go for testing. The other 4 would say, no, they're just lazy, they just need to work harder. We'll get them a tutor. Now it's flipped. So now it's 1 in 5 that don't go for testing. So parents are becoming more aware. They're becoming more accepting. I think the predominance of IGCSEs, and that's what a lot of our parents in the British system, what our parents aspire to.
So that's the examination process
Yes.
before A levels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here in Egypt, you have to have 8. You have to have 8 GCSEs at extended level to get into university within Egypt. It's a hard task for any child, and a child that's on the spectrum or has cognitive issues, it's very, very difficult. So I think parents are beginning to realise that obtaining the diagnoses obtains accommodations like extra time or speech to text or a scribe. So these things aid their child in obtaining their GCSEs.
And outside of Egypt, there's usually a duty to accommodate legally as
Yes,
well, right?
yeah.
So, which
Yeah.
we're not quite there yet in this country.
Well, British schools do. I think because we're under the British school umbrella, and to pass the BSME or the BSO, so these are accreditation award companies that give us our accreditation for our standing for our school. To be a BSO school or a BSME school, you have to meet the criteria for the UK. So if I have a child with a statement, I legally have to meet the needs of that statement
So a
as best I
statement
can.
is like some kind
What
of...
you write as if the
Yes.
psychologist.
I see.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
you would write. So I have to meet those within my school as best I can, because otherwise I will fail my BSO accreditation or my BSME accreditation. If I fail that, then the ministry lowers our level as a school, which then lowers our fees, which then lowers the quality of educators that we get, lowers the quality of the students that we get.
I see. One thing, just to touch on something you mentioned, with a reluctance to diagnosis, for example, especially for neurodivergence, ADHD. One thing I noticed in my clinical practice is that sometimes it's just really normalized because it is so genetic that there's usually a parent
Undiagnosed themselves.
correct, and so through that diagnostic process for their child, they're also learning about their own misdiagnosis. So that can be quite an awakening for the parent.
They tend to sit with me and they tend to say, no, it's definitely not, as they're moving around and their feet are going and they're fidgeting. And I think, yes, Dad, it's you.
So something that is really emerging in the research literature, and I'd like to know if you see it as well. Let's look at, say, for example, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. It really is an anxiety disorder, and it's also a transient diagnosis. It's not always a permanent thing.
Yeah.
It's really how one's anxiety is manifesting.
Yeah.
But we see a triangulation very often in individuals with autism, but also ADHD. So it kind of just makes up one of those points on the triangle, and they very often go together. Do you observe that even in young people? An obsessiveness, say, with...
I think it's difficult within a school setting to see it because school is very routine anyway. I think we tend to see it when the absence of the routines are not there. So, as particularly within a secondary institution, the children will have 8 different teachers, and obviously teachers have different standards, different personalities. So you may see a child that holds it together, an ADHD child that holds it together in a maths lesson, an English lesson, for instance, because they're very structured, they're very much routine, they know what to expect. So their anxiety is managed by the teacher. But then they may go into a humanities lesson or an art lesson, which is a bit freer, and that's when you see the manifestation of their ADHD-ness, because their anxiety gets out of control. So then, because they can't put rituals and routines together, then they spiral. So then their anxiety increases. So then their ritual might be, how quickly can I be ejected from this room? So then I can walk up and down on the corridor, or I can sit and rock by the wall, because that's the way that they manage their anxiety. That's their OCD trait. So in a school setting, it's more, you see the absence of the structure and the routines, which leads to a behaviour rather than an obsessive trait of counting or
Seeing that overt
yes,
compulsion,
yes,
right?
yes. So,
which is just a behavior
yeah.
or a habit.
I mean, there are children that we see out frequently out of certain lessons, and their OCDness is they have to walk. They have to walk, and they walk to a certain point on the corridor, then they come back, then they walk again, and then they come back. And until they've done it their number of times, you've no chance of getting them back into a classroom. So they do have traits, yes, but it's not, I would say, unless you're really looking for it, it's not what we would class as typical OCD.
Yes.
So they don't have to have their pens in a certain place. They don't have to have their bag in a certain place.
You know, with your experience working in the MENA region and, you know, for 8 years in Egypt, what do you think that we can do better at to support young people in this country? We're in Egypt right now. What do you think we can do better at?
I think Egypt, I love working in Egypt. I like the soul of Egypt. I like the history of Egypt. But I think it's a little bit behind where other countries are in the MENA region. And I think the ministers, the Minister for Education, the Minister for Mental Health, I think they need to go and spend time in places like the Emirates, Abu Dhabi and Dubai. They are so much further advanced than what we are here. And they are leading the way. They are trailblazing the way. They have, their people that are on the SCN spectrum are called people of determination. They have a dedicated minister for them. They have dedicated school inspections. They have two, so one for the academic side and one for the social, emotional, special needs side. If you fail on the social and emotional and special needs side, your school is closed. It's not pass this, unpass this, or you fail. You fail this side, so you fail to take into account social, emotional, SCN, mental health issues, and they will close your school.
Now, I just was reminded of another qualification that you have, that and that is it's an auditor for standards, right? Tell me about
a BSO inspector.
Yeah, so you're also an inspector in the British system.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. You know, so you're quite knowledgeable about these things that, you know,
I think so.
We need to improve here. Until the country does catch up, you know, particularly Egypt, you know.
They are doing. They're on their way, yeah.
So what can we do in the meantime?
I think education. I think being open and things like this will also help.
Our conversation.
Yeah, this podcast, hopefully it will get out there. I think teachers need to be made more aware. There are only a couple of centres within New Cairo that actually offer educational facilities for teachers to teach them about how to manage ADHD, how to spot it, how to manage it. There's only one centre that really does anything with autism to really educate the local teachers, because local teachers are Egyptian.
Which centre is that?
The one that for autism is Launch in Mardi.
Yes, that's right.
And then LRC do a lot of education of teachers. So they do ADHD, they do processing and working memory. So they run courses, but they're expensive. And for a national teacher on a local salary, you're looking at 5,000, 6,000 LE just for a 3-evening course, which is a lot of money for a local hire teacher. So part of my role is to ensure that I educate the teachers that are in our schools too, because I'm up against their cultural beliefs. Some of our teachers are clearly neurodivergent, but they've never been tested, and they believe that they've been successful because they're teachers now. Well, I didn't need any help. I didn't need a label. I've got to where I am. So part of my role is to educate too. And I think the more that we have access to the people in power, so the more chances I get to meet with the Minister of Secondary Education and tried to meet with the Minister of Higher Education. I've done those things to try and educate, and the more people like Dahlia and LRC are actually shouting about these things, then things will change.
I'm
Up
hoping
till
to
then,
invite her to this
Dahlia.
conversation as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's good. Yeah. She's very much an advocate of change, and of empowering children and making sure that Egypt is run by people in the future that have the right qualities and the right skill set to get there. And we're on our way. We are definitely on our way. But we need to look at the way that the education system is run and managed, and bring in things like BTECs and diplomas rather than the IGCSEs and the A levels, because it's tough for our kids. And I think working with people like you and other centres will enable our parents to become educators of their families, so that they become accepting of the fact that my child is unique.
yes,
My child is special. And that's a good thing.
the child is special.
The child is special, yes.
There is one thing that, you know, differs in my diagnostic process, you know, at Mahdi Psychology Center. When I'm assessing and diagnosing, say, autism, ADHD, for example, I don't always include recommendations in my report, and that is because the school policy may not align with recommendations. So that's something that I'm always mindful of, you know, that I will have my recommendations, you know, based on the school policy.
Right.
You know, there's no point me putting recommendations that can't be met.
I think, speaking as Senko, I receive reports from 7 or 8 different centres, of which Mahdi Psychology is one of them. And I do get recommendations from, I would say, most of them. And I would say, as a Senko, give me the recommendations. Give me them all. Because if I can't do them in school, then it gives me a chance to advocate for that child. Maybe it is school policy that says I can't do this, but then if this is what this child needs, then I will then go and say, this is what's recommended.
Okay.
Yeah. Because from the British system, in primary school, they're not allowed to use calculators. And yet I have 3 children that have been, it's stipulated on their statement that they should be allowed a calculator, but they're primary age. So I was told no initially. I got in touch with England, got in touch with the exam board and the QCA, and they said, yes, they can. So now they have a calculator. But if you'd have known that, you wouldn't have put it on their policy, you see. So then they would have gone through primary with no calculator. So all information is better, for then it's then up to me to either advocate or to remove or to explain that I'm sorry, we can't do this.
Okay, or to adapt.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really good feedback, and I think important for parents to know as well.
Yeah, because sometimes they come in with this big long list of this is what I want for my child, and yet you as the expert in this field, you have said no, they don't actually need this. So if I have your recommendations, and they say to me, oh, he needs to have 100% extra time. Well, actually, the psychologist has said 25. Based on his processing speed and working memory, he's only entitled to 25. Whereas if you hadn't given me any recommendations, I would have been arguing with that parent. So yeah, it is good to have more information than no information.
You're now moving into an area of practice yourself.
Yep. Moving into my passion.
Into your passion, and that is you're now also a play therapist.
Yep.
I'd like to hear all about play therapy, and I think you're trained in 2 modalities. Is that right?
1 modality currently. Yes.
Currently,
and
okay.
then hopefully looking at putting the other one in as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us about play therapy.
Play therapy is so necessary. Children are not cognitive until 13. So the ability to have rational thoughts, to reason, to explain, to tell you why a behaviour is that you're seeing, why their anxiety is high, why they're having temper tantrums. They don't have the words. They don't have the words until 13. And even at 13, if that trigger has taken them back to a previous age, they still struggle with the words. So play therapy is non-directive, child-led. They play, and through their play, they work through any issues, any trauma, any struggles that they're having. They work through it with play. They don't need to speak. I can work with a selective mute. I can work with a child who doesn't speak. I can work with a child who predominantly only speaks Arabic, because we don't have to talk. They talk to me through their play.
through the play.
Through their play, through their sand, through their paints, through whatever they're doing. They talk to me through their play.
What demographic do you work with in play
The
therapy?
sweet spot is age 3 to 12, but we can go up to 13, 14. And because play therapy is based on Carl Rogers' person-centered therapy, I can use the techniques with older children. So it's not, they may not necessarily play as in play in the sand tray or with art, but they colour, they do jigsaws, they play games. So they are playing and they talk. And when a person is doing something with their hands, they're freer to speak. So they still speak, and you still use the same non-directive, person-centered techniques. So play therapy, I think all adults should play. I think we all should play.
I think as we get older, we forget to play.
We do
don't we?
forget to play, yeah.
So that Rogerian unconditional positive regard.
Yeah.
What does that look like in play therapy when you're interacting with a young person?
Accepting. It looks like when they tip the whole entire contents of my playroom in the sand tray, I just go, I don't say anything. I don't think, oh my goodness, I have to clean this up. When they empty 8 paint pots all over a table and then do this with their hands, it's necessary. It's what they need to do. They can say what they need to say. They can act the way they want to act. We have a saying that's grant in fantasy what you can't grant in reality.
Sorry, say that again.
Grant in fantasy what you can't grant in reality.
Oh.
So a child is free to come into my room and put a baby doll in a coffin and bury it and say, I wish that was my sister. Because I'm granting in fantasy what I can't grant in reality. And that's not necessarily going to mean he wants to bury his sister. It just means at the moment he's struggling with sibling rivalry.
Yes, okay. So a lot of interpretation.
Yeah. But I don't need to interpret because it's not for me to know what's going on. The kid knows what's going on. The child knows what he needs to work through.
So you're providing just a space for that expression.
I just provide the time, the space and the opportunity for them to be what they need to be. If they want to beat Bobo for 45 minutes, they can. If they want to lay on the rug for 45 minutes, they can. If they want to scream and shout and bang a drum, they can.
It's their space.
It's their
for that
space.
session
45
time.
minutes of their time just to be and be accepted and to be free. It's amazing. It really is amazing. It works for ADHD, autism, trauma. It works for any modality, any problem it works for. Divorce, grief.
What do you see most of in this part of the world, in your...
Anxiety.
Anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety. Yeah.
So maybe, the child is faced with unrelenting standards.
Yep. Divorce, family troubles, death. Grief is a big one too. But I would say it's predominantly anxiety that I see in the playroom, whether it comes from death of a parent or whether it comes from social media or standards. Yeah, but definitely anxiety is there.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so in your work as a play therapist, where the majority maybe are coming to you with some kind of anxiety for different reasons, how might that manifest, for parents watching this that are considering, maybe coming to see someone like you as a play therapist? What would they look for? Parents,
there's only a few things that children can control, because as we know, children's lives are hyper-controlled, whether it be school, whether it be you get up at this time, you go to bed at this time, you eat this, we go to sport, we do this, we do that. So there's only a few things that children control. There's only 3 things really: food, bedtimes, and toilet training. Those are the 3 things that they can control. So if any child is struggling with sleep, it could well be part of anxiety, or it could be a cry for help. Food issues, reluctance to eat foods, or being very, very power-driven with food, and then the toileting too. So
what might we see with...
bedwetting, soiling themselves, withholding, wetting themselves. Yeah, those are often the ones. And then obviously, if we don't see those, it can be tearfulness, it can be a reluctance to go somewhere, lack of social interaction. The younger the child, the more likely you are to get the bedwetting, the toileting, the food, the sleep. the older the child, it's more argumentative, it's more the change in behaviour. So the reluctance to go anywhere or being very clingy, very tearful.
So something that's changed about the child's behavior. That would be something to look out for.
And teachers usually spot it. Teachers are usually the ones that will say to a parent that something's changed because they see them day in, day out, so they know their kids. So we rely on a lot of parents being told by teachers or teachers referring them to me, and then we go from there.
And so you offer play therapy at Cairo English School?
Yep.
And also in private practice?
Yep. Yeah.
So Sharryn, what message would you have for parents, with children in need, or if they're seeing the differences that you mentioned, differences in their behavior, what message would you have for them?
I think reach out. Reach out, because culturally, culture is important, but ultimately you had these children and you love them and you want what's best for your kids, whether that be academically, socially, emotionally. You want what's best for your kids. And I think sometimes we have to put culture to one side and do what's right for our kids. And that means reaching out. Reach out to somebody who is an expert, somebody who can give you that knowledge that you're craving, to know how to support them, to know how to ensure that your children are happy and socially, emotionally, academically, the best that they can be. Because children are unique. We're not all the same. We don't all have to fit in the same mold.
Absolutely.
We don't all have to be lawyers, doctors, engineers. We need creative people. We need the next, we need the next actor. We need the next singer. We need the next painter. Because aesthetically, we all appreciate these things. So your child could become well known in their field that they want to be in.
Absolutely.
They have to be happy, they have to be safe, and they have to be stable.
One thing that I really focus on in my clinical practice, and that is when there is a child with a particular special need or anxiety, like you mentioned, or some kind of neurodivergence, autism, ADHD, or even before we work out what's happening for that young person, I prefer to work with the family. Unless there is an organic disorder happening, attachment to parents is so important. And so I'll work with the family to, foster an improved attachment dynamic within the family system, but also between the parents and the child. How does that fit in with your work, when you see there might be an issue in the family?
Well, the modality that I use is called CCPT, so child-centered play therapy. There is a side component to it, which is CPRT, which is child-parent relationship therapy. So it's very similar techniques that I use within my playroom. So there's 11 rules of thumb that parents can follow at home, and I can train those parents how to do play therapy with the children at home. So they do once a week, they can do their own play therapy session, they can video it, we can talk about it. So I do work with parents alongside working with the child. And even if the parents don't necessarily want to take part in the CPRT, we meet every 6 weeks. So every 6 sessions I have with the child, I then meet with the parent and I tell them in broad strokes what's happening within the playroom. And I also give them strategies on what to use at home. So be a thermostat, not a thermometer, basically. So that's one of the rules of thumb that we can use. And there's loads of different other things techniques that I can give to parents to aid them to see their child, to hear their child, and let their child know that they are seen and heard.
Yeah.
Because that's what a child needs, and that's where it goes back to your attachment.
So, what you described with the play therapy that, includes the parents, what did you call that again?
CPRT.
CPRT. Yeah. That would foster a more secure attachment dynamic between parent and child. And like you said, to be seen and heard.
Yes.
That's very similar to emotionally focused therapy for families that I use. Which is more conversational, where everyone gets to express, the deep-seated emotion. How does play therapy, when involving the parents, does it tap into emotion, like expression of emotion between parent and child? How does that work?
It does it in that I will help them to be able to help a child identify their emotions. Because remember, they're not rational, they're not cognitive. So a lot of them don't understand what emotion they're feeling. And as parents, as adults, we tend to go on the surface, happy, sad, angry, upset, annoyed, but we don't go into the deeper emotions. So in the play therapy room, then I reflect their emotions. So I might say, oh, you're upset, or you're aggrieved, or you're annoyed. So then I give them more of the language of emotion. So when the parents are doing a play therapy session with their child, then I will get them to identify their emotions. So the parents then begin to read their kids, because I think they only see angry, they only see sad, they only see happy. They don't see the depth of emotions. So then when a child is acting out or is really withdrawn, they're unable to voice. The child is unable to voice. So then the parent needs to give them their voice. But the parent is also unable to voice what they're seeing or seeing their child feel. So I educate them in that way too. So yeah, the crossover between emotions, there isn't as much sharing from the parent perspective to the child, because
which is different for EFFT.
Pre-cognitive, you see. So
Yes.
it's more, let me see you, let me hear you from the parent perspective to the child.
Yes.
Because then I think once you educate a child in that this is, you're feeling despair, you're feeling frustration, you're feeling annoyance, they'll then begin to see it in their parent, but they don't necessarily need a parent to say to them, I am annoyed at you. So
They'll
it's more
recognize
that,
the
it's
emotion.
more the other way around.
Yeah.
There's a lot less, it's not to and fro, it's more it's the child's space, like it is in the playroom.
How does that, maybe remind parents, for example? I mean, many of us are not raised or haven't been shown anything about acknowledgement or validation growing up. That's something that we often learn as adults, or that we're learning more of in 2025. How do you teach parents the importance of acknowledging and validating what a child's feeling? It's something that I spend a lot of time working with parents about.
That's what I do in my 6-week consultations. So in the very first initial meeting with the parent, which I do before I meet with the child, it's basically an hour-long meeting, and the first 30 minutes is talk to me. Tell me what is happening in your world. Tell me what you're feeling. I acknowledge their feelings. You're frustrated. You're feeling annoyed. You're feeling upset. So I use the same techniques with the parents that I do with the children in the playroom. And the parent actually turns around and goes, yes, I am. Because
it's powerful, isn't it?
I think they've never really had, because if their partner is also feeling frustrated with the same situation, they're not ready to hear that you're frustrated, because guess what? I'm frustrated. So don't tell me you're frustrated, because I am.
You just see everything calm down, right? As soon as you validate.
Yeah, so I think the 6-weekly meetings are really, really important for the parents, for them to offload things that they need to offload, and for me to validate their feelings. So then they begin to appreciate this is what it feels like. And even if a child is doing what you don't want them to do, or they're not allowed to do, you can say, you're really annoyed. You're really annoyed that we have to leave now. We still have to leave.
Yes.
But you're just validating their feelings that they are annoyed that we have to leave.
So I say that to parents as well. Acknowledge and validate before you correct.
Yeah.
So, as we finish our conversation for this episode, Sharryn, any last words that you'd like to share?
Be open. Be open. Accept that your child is unique. Your child is special. You love your child. You want what's best for your child. And whatever's best for your child, seek it. Seek it, find it, utilize it, and remember that it's a triad. Like you spoke about earlier, it's the parent, it's the child, it's the therapist, or the Senko, or the teacher. all three have to work together. If one leg of the stool is missing, it will fall over. So you have to do the work too. Yeah.
Sharryn Smith, Senko at Cairo English School and play therapist in private practice and also at Cairo English School. Thank you for joining me on Crossroads.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Always.
Thank you for joining Crossroads podcast. If any of these conversations resonated with you, please share them with someone who might need them. If you need therapeutic support, I offer clinical services at Mahdi Psychology Center in Cairo and Dubai. You can find more details in the show notes, and see you next week.